And we are back with the second part of this week's Shabbat services. It is November 14th, 2020, or on the Hebrew calendar is Kesvan 27 in the year 5781. Um, you never know what we're going to run into when we're trying to record this live so it can be archived. So for people that are wanting to listen to this later on in the week, they can. But you never know what's going to happen when you do that. When we were beginning in the last part, of course, if you've been following along, we had a quick power outage. So I'm not sure if I've missed some things. And then there was another glitch in the online recorder. So there's probably a break in there as well. So anyway, hopefully moving forward, we won't have any other interruptions. So I'm going to continue with the Torah portion. We just read chapter 23, and we talked about the life of Sarah. And Sarah had passed away at 127 years old. And Abraham had got a plot, had gotten the cave and the cave of Machpelah, in which to bury Sarah in. And the sons of Heth actually wanted to give it to him for nothing, and Sarah and Abraham insisted that he was going to pay for it, and the surrounding land. So this was going to be the burial place for also Abraham as well. So we're going to move on to chapter 24. This is where Rebecca is coming in. Remember, we talked about that as a spoiler alert, but here we're going to bring Rebecca into the story. Courting Rebecca. Now Abraham was old, advanced in years, and Adonai blessed Abraham in everything. Then Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who managed everything that belonged to him, now put your hand under my thigh so that I may make you take an oath by Adonai, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from among the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am dwelling. On the contrary, to my land and to my relatives you must go and get a wife for my son Isaac. But the servant said to him, suppose the woman were unwilling to follow after me to this land. Should I then have your son go back to the land you came from? Abraham said to him, see to it that you don't return my son there. Adonai, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my native land, and who spoke to me and made a pledge to me, saying, to your seed I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. If the woman is not willing to follow after you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Nevertheless, you must not return my son there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and he made a pledge to him concerning this matter. And this was a way that they made covenants and vows and such. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and left with the best of his master's things in his hand. Then he arose and went to Aram Naharaim, to Nahor's city. Then he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time for the going out to draw water. Adonai, the God of Abraham, my master, he said, please make something happen before me today and show loyalty to Abraham, my master. Look, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are going out to draw water. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please tip your jar so that I may drink, and she will say, drink, and I'll also water your camels. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. So by this I'll know that you have shown graciousness to my master. Now before he had finished speaking, behold, there was Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Micah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, going out with her jar on her shoulder. Now this young woman was very good looking, a girl of marriageable age, and she was a virgin. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please, let me sip a little water from your jar. So she said, "Drink, my lord," and she quickly lowered her jar onto her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she finished giving him a drink, she said, "I'll also draw water for your camels until they've finished drinking." So she quickly poured out her jug into the trough, ran back to the well to draw water, and drew water for all his camels, while the man continued to pay close attention to her, keeping silent in order to know whether or not Adonai had made his way successful. Now after the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a nose ring of gold weighing a half shekel and two bracelets on her hands weighing 10 shekels of gold. "Whose daughter are you?" he said. "Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" She said to him, "I'm the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She also said to him, "There is both straw and plenty of feed with us, as well as a room to spend the night." Then the man bowed down and worshipped Adonai, and he said, "Blessed be Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loyalty and his truth toward my master. As for me, Adonai has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers." Then the young woman ran and told her mother's house these things. Now Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. And Laban ran outside to the man at the spring as soon as he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's hands. And we heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, saying, "Thus the man said to me." He went to the man. Then there he was standing by the camels at the spring. So he said, come in, blessed of Adonai. Why are you standing outside when I've tidied up the house and there is room for the camels? So the man came to the house, and he unloaded the camels. Straw and feed were given to the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Food was placed before him to eat, but he said, "I won't eat until I have stated my business." So he said, "Speak." "I am Abraham's servant," he said. "Adonai has blessed my master very much, so that he has become great, and he has given to him flocks of sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male slaves and female slaves, camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my master's wife, gave birth to a son for my master after she was old, and he gave him everything he owns. Then my master made me take an oath, saying, 'You must not take a wife for my son from among the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I am dwelling. Instead, you must go to my father's house and to my family and take a wife for my son.' But I said to my master, 'Suppose the woman won't come back with me?' So he said to me, 'Adonai, before whom I walk continually, will send his angel with you, and he will make your way successful, and you will take a wife for my son from my family and from my father's household. Then you'll be free from my wife if you come to my family, and if they don't give her to you, then you'll be free from my oath.' So I came today to the spring, and I said, 'Adonai, the God of Abraham, my master, if you are really going to make my way upon which I am walking successful, look, I am standing by the spring of water, so let it be that the unmarried girl who is going out to draw water, to whom I'll say, "Please give me a little water to drink from your jug," and she'll say to me, "You drink, and I'll also draw water for your camels," let her be the woman whom Adonai appoints for my master's son." I had not yet finished speaking to my heart, and behold, there was Rebekah going out. Her jug was on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. So I said to her, "Please give me a drink." And she quickly lowered her jug off of her and said, "Drink, and I'll also water your camels." So I drank, and she also watered the camels. Then I asked her, "Whose daughter are you?" And she said, "The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him." Then I placed the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her hands. I bowed down and worshipped Adonai, and blessed Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, who guided me on the true way to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. So now, if you're really going to show loyalty and truth to my master, tell me. But if not, tell me, and I'll turn to the right or to the left." Then Laban and Bethuel answered, and they said, The matter proceeds from Adonai. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her become a wife for our master's son, but just as Adonai has spoken. Now when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed down to the ground to Adonai. Then the servant brought out articles of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious gifts to her brothers and to her mother. Then they ate and drank, and he and the men who were with them, and spent the night. When they arose in the morning, he said, "Send me off to my master." But her brother with her mother said, "Let the young woman stay with us a few days or 10. Afterwards she may go." But he said to them, "Don't delay me, since Adonai has made my way successful. Send me off so that I can go to my master." So they said, "We'll call the young woman, and let's ask her opinion." Then they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" She said, "I will go." So they sent Rebekah, their sister, off with her nanny and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands and 10,000s, and may your seed possess the gate of those who hate him." Then Rebekah got up with her maids, and they mounted the camels and followed after the man. So the servant took Rebekah and departed. Now Isaac had come from visiting Beer Roy and was living in the land of the Negev. Isaac went out to meditate, strolling in the field at dusk, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, behold, camels were coming. Rebekah also lifted up her eyes and saw Isaac. Then she fell off her camel. Then she said to the servant, "Who is that man there who is walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "He is my master." So she took the veil and covered herself. Then the servant recounted to Isaac all the things he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after the loss of his mother. Chapter 25. We're only going to read up to the 18th verse here to end this Torah portion. Abraham's old age and descendants. Now Abraham took another wife. Her name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Mederi, Midian, Ishbak, Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. Dedan's sons were Ashurim, Letishim, and Lumim. Midian's sons were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abidah, and Eldah. All of these were Keturah's sons. Now Abraham gave everything that he had to Isaac, but to the sons of Abraham's concubines Abraham had given gifts and sent them away from his son Isaac while he was still living eastward to the land of the east. Now these are the days of the years of Abraham's life that he lived, 175 years. So Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, old and satisfied. Then he was gathered to his peoples. Then Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, next to Mamre, the field that Abraham bought from the sons of Heth. There Abraham is buried along with Sarah his wife. After Abraham's death, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac lived near Beer Lahai Roi. Now these are the genealogies of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian slave girl, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael by their names according to their descendants. Ishmael's firstborn, Nebahoth, then Kedar, Abdeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedem. These are Ishmael's sons, and these are their names by their unwalled and walled settlements, 12 princes according to their clans. These are the years of Ishmael's life. Ishmael lived 137 years. He breathed his last, died, and was gathered to his peoples. Then they dwelled from Havilah to Shur. which is east of Egypt, as you go toward Assyria, over against all his brothers he fell. And that is the end of the Torah portion. So we're going to recap the Torah portion. So this week's Torah portion focuses on the death of both Sarah and Abraham, and also it focuses on Abraham's quest to find a wife for his son Isaac. Um, Abraham disapproves of the Canaanite women, so he doesn't want Isaac to leave the land of Israel to find his wife. So he sends his servant, um, has his servant make a promise to him that he will find the right woman to marry his son, but he sends him to the place of his family. And then, of course, this Torah portion ends with Abraham passing on, and also the genealogy of Ishmael. So when we open up, Sarah dies at the beginning of uh, this parashat, and her burial at 127 years, Sarah dies, and Abraham wants to find an appropriate burial place for her in their adopted hometown of Hebron. So he looks at that cave of Machpelah, and he goes to negotiate with the sons of Hesh, and they finally settle on 400 silver shekels. Just a little side note on the name of Hebron in Hebrew. It's from the root word chevar, or friend, and so the contraction for chevar and na'i uh, means agreeable. So the city's name actually indicates that Abraham, who settled there, was the first agreeable friend of God. Um, and in Isaiah 41, verse 8, the seed of Abraham, my friend, it's stated. So Abraham actually had lived in this area for over 60 years, but there was never any mention of him purchasing land until now, to purchase the burial plot for where he was going to bury Sarah. So this is actually a land purchase. So it continues on after Abraham mourns and buries Sarah. He turns his attention to finding a wife for Isaac, for their son, because Abraham is advanced in years. He wants to make sure that Isaac is matched up and taken care of, and knowing that Isaac is to be his heir, not just any one would do, and he did not want Isaac to leave the Holy Land for any reason, but he did not want Isaac to take any of the local women at all as a wife. So Abraham entrusted his servant to actually select a wife for Isaac from among Abraham's own kin back in Aram Naharaim, and that's spelled Aram hyphen Naharaim. So Abraham basically told the servant, if no one will come, at least you have done your duty, and I will release you from this oath that you're making. So the servant swore that he was going to uphold the oath that he made to Abraham, and he set off with 10 camels, and men went with him, and he had gifts and also with him. So as we see, he arrives at the well on the outskirts of the town, and he starts praying to God for God to show him the woman that God means for Isaac, for a wife for Isaac, and specifically said, certain things, that she would offer him a drink, and then would then offer to water the camels. So Rebecca comes out. She has a jug on her shoulder, and that all unfolds. She says the very things. It's almost like that prophecy was definitely fulfilled through Rebecca. So what happens is Rebecca's brother. Now this is a spoiler alert because uh, Laban is her brother, who we're going to see later on with Jacob. He tried to delay Rebecca's leaving. Um, as we see later in the story of Jacob dealing with Laban, he's a pretty shrewd character. But so he didn't keep Rebecca from going. He was going to try to delay it, and Abraham's servant said, "No, this is what Adonai wants. Do not delay what Adonai has already stated." And then they decided to let Rebecca make that decision. And Rebecca said, "I will go." So Rebecca made the decision to not delay going, and she said she would go with the servant and become a wife to Isaac. And when their eyes met, Rebecca covered her face in a veil. That was actually a tradition, an old ancient tradition. When a woman was promised to marriage, she would cover her face so that no other uh, possible suitor would come to look at her because she was already spoken for. So that was why she did that. And then Isaac does take Rebekah as a wife, and it says that he is comforted after the loss of his mother. So the Torah portion ends actually with Abraham actually taking on, he actually takes on another wife and fathers more children, uh, which is very interesting. And then he passes on, and then we end this Torah portion with the genealogy of Ishmael and indicating the 12 princes that were born through Ishmael. So, and Abraham lived to be 175 years old. Ishmael lived to be 137 years old. But Abraham lived on to see his grandchildren. Um, but that was about it on Abraham and this Torah portion. And just interestingly enough, Abraham's servant's name was Eliezer. So, and that is, this Eliezer was spelled Eliezer. And Abraham's second wife was Keturah, and he fathered 6 additional sons. But Isaac was his only designated heir, designated by God. So that is the end of the Torah portion. We are going to close this in a prayer and then come take a break and come back for the second portion of Shabbat service. We're going to do the Haftorah and Brit Kadashah together. Father God, we thank you. We thank you for your precious word, your precious Torah. We see the families that you blessed and how the seed of Abraham is beginning to move into Isaac now. And next we will have Jacob and then the 12 tribes of Israel. You had a divine plan through this family, and we're going to see this family through the Genesis stories, and as it all develops, and as a foreshadow to Yeshua coming, because these out of the tribe of Judah, uh, our Messiah will have come. So we thank you for the Torah. We thank you for what it gives to us, the insight that it gives. And we thank you in the blessed, mighty, awesome name of Yeshua, Jesus. Amen and amen. Take a short break and come back, and we'll come back to the second half of today's Shabbat service.